Welcome, everybody, back to the third episode of the Great American Squabble. This is my co host, Unoptimized Fool,
Hello, greetings.
and I'm You Gotta Believe. We are here to bring you insight into modern day politics and world news. So get ready to refuel with the gas. Let's get started. Here's our first topic. House Republicans have unveiled aid bills for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. It's about time those House Republicans showed some support for our global allies. Better late than never, right? Let's not forget the political tightrope they're walking here. I mean, they've got to keep their conservative base happy while also trying to appease the Democrats. This move does show a willingness to work together across party lines for the greater good. The bills did pass with significant bipartisan support, so kudos to them for putting aside their differences and doing something that benefits not only our allies, but also maintains our position on the global stage. Now, if only they could do the same when it comes to domestic issues, we might actually get other shit done, but baby steps, right?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail right on the head there. They kind of go into 26.4 billion to Israel to kind of support their whole situation in the Middle East there with Gaza and Hezbollah and Iran. 60.8 billion to bolster Ukraine, which they desperately need. They were doing some rationing with their artillery shells, which was terrible to see. And then 8.1 billion counter China in the Indo-Pacific, including billions for Taiwan. So, I mean, yeah, China's a growing threat. There's already plans to invade Taiwan. I think China's going to do it. Um, I'm glad that they passed it, but I want my only gripe with it is that we need to defend the homeland first, right? Without a homeland, we won't be able to send these billions of dollars to all these countries. And right now, we have a big crisis on our border. And I want us to kind of obviously, we should still help other people, but this should also have included a bill for our homeland security, right? So there's indications that a standalone bill addressing the U.S. border might be prepared, but nothing's written, nothing's discussed. It's a disaster. I know that the last one was shot down by Republicans too, so it's a big disaster. But everyone needs to we can agree on foreign aid. Why can't we agree on domestic aid? That's what blows my mind.
And we do know your thoughts about protecting the homeland.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a few topics in recent episodes
Yeah,
discussing this. And so
yeah,
if you
it's a
guys
big
want to
thing for me.
find out
Yeah.
about that, I do recommend looking back on some of those older episodes. They're actually on YouTube, on Twitter, I think Twitch as well. So
Yeah.
go ahead and do that. You're going to get some good content and see what Fool is talking about.
Absolutely.
Our next topic is the FAA announced that it would require more rest for air traffic controllers following a series of close calls. Fool?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want close calls when it comes to aviation. United States is known for its secure aviation, minus the Boeing stuff, right? But when it comes to traffic control, we're ironclad with that type of thing. So it's good that they're requiring a minimum of 10 hours of rest between shifts for air traffic controllers, right? Which was previously 9, right? So it's only an hour, but an hour counts when you're sleeping, right? Or resting, just not with the high stress job. It's a very stressful job for air traffic controllers. um, Controllers working on midnight shift, their minimum of 12 hours of rest is mandated before the shift begins, and this is all required to start within 90 days. However, there's a shortage of air traffic controllers. So this is going to put us even tighter on finding positions. Again, we need air traffic controllers to control our airspace because again, we're having close calls with tired air traffic controllers. We're going to have a lot more accidents when there's zero air traffic controllers. So I'm not sure how they're going to put this in effect when we already have um, coverage holes in the facility schedules. So again, they're trying to hire about 1,800 new air traffic controllers this year, but they're trying to hire 1,800 new air traffic controllers. So let's see what that actual number is later on. So again, it's good, but can they do it?
You make a good point about the hiring. It seems like they don't have a hiring push all the time. It's like once every 10 years, they'll hire for a crazy amount of air traffic controllers and pilots and things like that, because it's one of those jobs where they last a long time, and
True.
so there's not many openings. But the problem is they're so tired because they're understaffed, frankly. So personally, it's one of those areas where I think they should just have more money and as much staffing as possible. But as with my response, sorry, I kind of added a little bit of butter to that
Oh,
one,
that's
but
fine. We need butter.
exactly. I think it's a step in the right direction, but it's definitely a band aid on a much larger issue. A fact that the air traffic control system is understaffed and it's underfunded, and it's been a problem for years. FAA has been slow to address these issues, and it's only because of recent close calls that they've finally taken action. We need to invest more in our air traffic control system, both in terms of funding and personnel. It means hiring more air traffic controllers, like Fool said, providing them with better training, and ensuring that they have the resources they need to do their jobs safely and effectively. It also means modernizing our air traffic control infrastructure, which is way outdated and in need of repair. And as somebody who has like my best friend, his mom is actually an air traffic controller.
Mm-hmm.
It's as stressful as they say. They've got to
Mm-hmm.
have these mandated breaks that are, like it's like every hour and a half or 2 hours or something like that we were talking about, but they're changing all these rules to make it more often now, and it's it's needed because we've all seen Breaking Bad. We know what happens if you get depressed. You let the planes crash and bad things happen, and we don't need
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah. It
Um,
only takes one slip up to have something bad happen. Absolutely.
and that is very scary,
Mm-hmm.
especially with planes. They have so many people in them. It's not
Yeah.
just and one death is terrible, but we're talking at times hundreds of people. That's
Yeah.
oof.
Yeah. And just to add some more butter to this, like this was kind of talking about the latest close call. I forget what airport it was, but a plane went across the runway. The taxi plane was taken off, and thankfully they caught it. But it could have been another total disaster. That would have been pretty much two fueled up planes hitting each other. That would be the result of many fatalities. So, again, those air traffic controllers must feel terrible about it. But they're human. They make mistakes. But unfortunately, those mistakes cost hundreds of lives sometimes.
Our next topic: U.S. Senate approved and Biden signed the bill that forces ByteDance to sell TikTok. This might be the biggest news of the week, funny
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
But I think I'll get started on this one. This is a oof, topic. I know my thoughts about it. While concerns about data privacy and national security are valid, the forced sale of TikTok sets a dangerous precedent for government overreach. It could potentially undermine the principles of an open internet and free speech, particularly for millions of Americans who rely on TikTok for creative expression, information sharing, and, as of recently, income generation. The decision to target TikTok specifically could be seen as politically motivated, especially given that other social media platforms collect abundant amounts of data, raises questions about the selective enforcement of data privacy regulations and the potential for similar actions against other companies in the future. This move could have unintended consequences for international relations, particularly with China. It could escalate tensions and lead to retaliatory actions against American companies operating in China. And as I raised this earlier, because I'm a gamer myself, you've got now these companies like Epic Games and Riot, who Tencent have a huge stake in, and they're owned by the Chinese government. How
Hmm.
long until they say these games need to be sold to American companies? And where do we draw the line?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a line in the sand that's being drawn by the United States, and really what it comes down to is it's about data, right? United States collects data from TikTok, from Twitter, well, from X, excuse me, Facebook, Instagram, every social media, even Truth Social. It collects that data, parses it, and does what it needs to do with it. They were just upset that China has access to this data too, right? It's all just about this data acquisition, right? And unfortunately, United States was like, we're going to take this out. Now, am I worried about government overreach into social media? That's already there. If they do this to X, or if they do this to a US based company, then I'll be worried. But since this had Chinese influence inside of it, because again, remember, a lot of people sometimes don't understand this. Even though it's the CEOs from Taiwan, from I think from Taiwan, or no, Singapore, excuse me, sorry, he's from Singapore, right? It's based out of China. In 2021, ByteDance allowed the Chinese government to take a 1% ownership stake called the golden share in one of its China-based subsidiaries of the company, which makes it China, the Chinese government, have a paper trail into the company. But they don't need a paper trail to be in the company. They were already collecting that data. Um, so I understand why they did it. I think it's the best move. And then just to add one more thing to this too, I'm honestly surprised Biden signed it, because this could have hurt. This could be seen as some old boomer trying to take away, the fancy new social media. So I thought maybe this would hurt Biden in the long run for like reelection bid, but um, hopefully either it's bought out by a U.S. company before then, or it takes longer to, because right now TikTok is still in the hands of millions of people. So I don't think it will affect him as much as I thought it was going to originally.
We have a little bit of different views on the TikTok situation, but that's
Yeah.
okay. Uh, I just worry that
Hmm.
even with American companies like
Yeah.
X, when do they come to somebody like Elon Musk and they think that he's pushing propaganda a certain
Yeah,
way?
that's when
And
I would be worried, right? Because again, I guess this does open the door to that type of thing, but I just see it as they don't want China to get this data. We're gonna stop China from getting this data, and if they start doing for X, Instagram, Facebook, I'll be right on your team then, right? But I, they don't have the kind of like the reason to do that for X, because it's not Chinese based. It's United States based. Run by a
understood.
guy from South Africa, though, so I guess maybe there's that. But
All right. Well, our next one. Former National Enquirer publisher stated that he used his tabloid to suppress stories that could harm Trump. Fool?
yeah, yeah. I mean, crazy stuff happening. Like I wish the public was able to hear this type of thing. I don't suspect anyone lying about this stuff. I just want to hear it. Transparency. Because we're relying on the media, and sometimes the media is not truthful, right? But yeah, long term friendship with them. Heads up on negative tips and stories that could be squashed. But again, not defending Trump here, but this is politics 101, right? If you think this is the first time someone squashed a bad report about themselves or a family member in the political sphere, you might want to go outside, right? This happens all the time. This one's just being brought to the limelight. It's happened with every administration. There's been stories about this and that's been tried to squash by news agency, right? And like for example, during the 2020 election, there were allegations, of course, remember about Hunter Biden's laptop. There was allegations of the Biden campaign suppressing stories of the original Biden laptop because again, it hurt Biden in the long run. So again, those weren't proven, but allegations, right? And it kind of would make sense that the Biden family wouldn't want those allegations out. It would hurt the reelection. I mean, it would hurt the election, which would make sense. So, yeah, I don't think Trump should get a pass with this. I think everyone who does this type of thing should be brought to whatever justice there may be. But I also think this boldens the base. Again, every time we go after Trump, which we should go after Trump in some aspects of this, right? But again, their base thinks that Trump is being attacked by the deep state. Every attack is their proof saying, "Hey, Trump is getting attacked by the deep state. The deep state is scared of Trump. He's going to drain the swamp, right?" That's what he said. So this boldens the base, right? They're like, oh, it's just a witch hunt. They're not talking about the Bidens and the Hunter laptop, case. They're only just doing it for Trump. If this was Biden, they wouldn't have cared, right? Again, just bolting that base, I think, is what's happening with this. But yeah, this is just politics. I honestly don't. I suspect it from every candidate, honestly, unfortunately.
While it might be just politics, I kind of find it deeply troubling, and it demonstrates a clear abuse of power and manipulation of the media landscape.
Oh yeah.
The kind of behavior undermines the principles of a free and fair press, which is essential to the functioning of a healthy democracy. National Enquirer's actions show a willingness to prioritize political gain over journalistic integrity. By burying stories that could potentially harm Trump's campaign, they effectively became a propaganda tool.
Mhm.
And rather than a news outlet, which I don't know if anybody really sees the National Enquirer as a news outlet,
That's
anyways,
another
but
debate. Yeah.
the kind of manipulation that they have can be dangerous, and it distorts the information available to voters and undermines the public ability to make informed decisions.
Hmm.
The fact that they coordinated with Trump and his associates suggests a level of collusion and corruption that should be deeply concerning to all Americans, regardless of their political affiliation. Um, and I kind of touched on this. People don't really see the National Enquirer as a serious publication. I don't believe. I've always seen it as like one of those joke ones with headlines and stuff and whatnot. But it does play a huge role in politics. And if a parody paper was working with, it's just as bad as a normal publication, but a
Hmm.
parody paper working with Trump, that's large, and it's probably just because of where they're located at. Uh,
Yeah.
that
Also the
area
friendship
is,
too.
yeah, exactly. The two things tie them together, and it's unfortunate, but it's brought to the public's attention now. So that's the good thing about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like just to kind of add some butter to that, like if the left does this or the right does this, I think it's both bad. Again, I know I said it's politics 101. I wish it wasn't, but it happens. Like think of it. Unfortunately, there's influence everywhere. There's propaganda everywhere. Always when you see online, always take it with a grain of salt. Get different perspectives. Don't read one article and take it at face value. That's all I'm saying. Especially with everything.
And our next topic: airlines will now be required to give automatic cash refunds for canceled and delayed flights. I'm excited about this one. Let me
Yeah, this
tell
one's
you
crazy.
why. It's a significant win for consumer rights. The policy ensures that passengers are fairly compensated for the inconvenience caused by airline mismanagement, such as significant delays or cancellations, and the rule requiring them to, well, there goes the dogs,
There.
provide cash refunds in the original form of payment rather than non cash flight credit or vouchers puts the power back into consumers' hands because now they're not required to use that same service again after they just had a crappy experience. Excuse my language. That's the big thing is before they were really forced. It's like, oh, okay, here you go. Here's a credit for the airline.
Hmm.
And, sometimes those credits had restrictions and blackout dates. And it's
They
like, you caused
also.
me this inconvenience and now this, and you're restricted and you might have full flights. And it was just a mess. This is going to keep them accountable and make sure that they improve their services as well because they're not going to want to be handing out all these refunds. I can tell you that. That's going to be a lot of
Yeah.
money lost.
Hmm. Right. Again, like also just to kind of build on what you said too, like those like credits, they expire after like a year, so you have to like use them. Like obviously you'd probably use them to get to wherever you're going, but some people stack them, and if it resets in a year, it's bad. But yeah, power to the consumer, right? This is awesome, and I'm glad your dogs had some good input on this. I like that angle that they offered. um yeah, I mean, let's just be clear, the consumer has more power here. That's amazing. These companies have been strangle us with these weird loop arounds waiting for customer service at the desk and stuff like that. I mean, the people who work at the desk are nice people. They're just doing a job, but again, they're in that system. They have to follow that system's rules. The system's flawed. Now, when the airlines, and I feel like this is going to happen, the airlines are going to be like, oh, we have to give you guys money. We're going to raise prices. Don't let them say that. You know why? Because operating profits in December was $3.2 billion. Okay. And then it went to $22.4 billion. Okay. That's just US based. Okay. That's a lot of money. They can give you $100 back, chat. Okay. They can do that without raising prices. So if they try to raise prices, they're just trying to protect their margins, just like every company is, right? And we should hold them accountable to that, right? So yeah, we made a big W here with consumer rights here, but don't let them raise prices on us and be like, "Oh, see, we shouldn't have gone after them." They're making billions of dollars of profit off of us. So just remember that.
Yeah, think of airlines like you think of Walmart.
Yep.
Is it really hurting them? No. It's
No.
not really hurting them. They're making
They'll be
so much
okay.
money hand over fist.
Yeah, they'll be okay.
Don't worry about them.
They can afford to give you $300 back.
Our next topic, grand jury indicts 18 in alleged Arizona fake elector scheme to re-elect Trump. Fool?
Listen, American democracy is messy currently. Okay, this is a good step, right? You know, obviously, what they did was this was a very non-violent way to take back the presidency with fake electors, right? This was their way of saying, okay, we're not going to go the violent route. We're going to go. And obviously, the violent route was January 6th with the insurrection, right? And again, like this should happen. They should be tried and see what happens. Whatever, again, they're innocent until proven guilty in this court of law that we live in. But there's a lot of evidence on one side. Okay, but yeah, it's crazy to think that they actually tried to do this. Like we say, like, oh yeah, they're you know 18 of them. Like this is crazy. They tried to reverse a decision the people made, right? And again, they think that the election was stolen. Again, there's no credible evidence that the election was stolen, and again, I lean right. So you think I would be like, tell ho, right? No, it's like there's no permanent evidence. I would love for anyone in chat to give me evidence of this because I haven't seen any. But I will end this thing here with this. I am worried, okay? Because again, this was the non-violent way to take back the presidency. Okay, the election was stolen in their eyes. Okay, I'm honestly more nervous, chat, of Trump losing again than I am Biden winning or Trump winning again because they tried the nonviolent way to take back the presidency. What are they going to do when their election is stolen again? That base is already angry, and I'm not saying there's going to be massive attacks. I'm just saying I'm just worried because they've proven to do anything they can to stay in power. What happens when it doesn't happen again? You know what I mean? So,
And this is a good time to plug Alex Garland's new movie Civil War.
oh
No, I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
yeah, California and Texas
That's what
working
we're
together.
leading. That's what
Yeah,
we're leading up to, I think, with
it makes me
all
like
this
I don't want
happening.
to. I like before you get into your second, I don't want to say civil war, but like it's starting to feel the air is starting to get weird. You know what I mean? It feels like it just feels weird. There's a lot of weird air and around. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it just feels weird.
Chat, don't sniff the weird air, okay?
Yeah,
Please,
put that away.
please don't sniff the
Throw it
weird
away.
air. Well, personally, I think it's a serious allegation. And if proven true, it could have significant implications for the integrity of our electoral system. Some argue that it's a politically motivated attack on individuals who are simply exercising their right to challenge the election results, like you were saying, fool. After all, it's not uncommon for political parties to challenge the validity of certain votes or electors in close elections. Happens
Mhm.
every year, or
True.
every 2 to 4 years, because they've got the
I knew what you
midterms
meant.
and stuff.
Yeah.
The integrity of our electoral system is paramount, and any attempts to undermine it should be thoroughly investigated and addressed. If the allegations are true, the individuals involved should be held accountable for their actions. Um, it's going to be interesting to see what type of evidence they're bringing against them to say that this is essentially treason. Is
Mhm.
really what it is. We'll see what happens and how it plays out because if they have any sort of evidence to prove that they were in the background, you know what I mean, in the back trying to make it so
Mhm.
that it seemed like he won Arizona, anything more than like, oh no, he won Arizona, guys, trust me. If they were actually like conspiring to make it seem like he won Arizona, that's a different story. And if there's evidence of that, that's a big problem because that's a swing state that could have swung the election and that could have caused something more serious than January 6th, depending
Mhm.
on what the evidence is. What were they conspiring and what were they doing?
Exactly. 100%. 100%.
Our next topic, Johnson. There's an appropriate time. you can't just give a guy Johnson, chat. You can't just give a guy Johnson. You know what he thinks of right away, man.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways, Johnson. There is an appropriate time for National Guard if student protesters don't disperse. Ooh.
Big one.
Ooh.
Huge. Massive.
So, the First Amendment guarantees the right to free speech and peaceful assembly. Student protests are a form of expression that should be protected, not suppressed. The deployment of the National Guard could have a chilling effect on students' willingness to engage in political discourse and activism. The presence of military personnel can lead to heightened tensions between protesters and authorities, increasing the risk of violence. It's concerning given the history of violent confrontations between protesters and law enforcement. If you recall the Kent State shootings in 1970, I wasn't alive for those, but neither was Fool. But it's a big moment in history right there. The National Guard is primarily intended to respond to natural disasters, domestic emergencies, and homeland security threats. Deploying them to handle student protests could divert resources from more pressing needs and blur the lines between military and civilian roles. I think it's important to acknowledge that while students have the right to protest, though, they also have a responsibility to do so peacefully and within the bounds of the law. However, it's essential to ensure that any response to unlawful or disruptive behavior is proportionate and respects the rights of all involved. It's a scary situation. They definitely have a right to protest. In some cases, they're disrupting the universities altogether, which isn't okay.
Alrighty. So, kind of to go into this, I obviously support the First Amendment with everything, but colleges are private property, so obviously if they're told to leave and they don't, obviously that's when the law can kick in. I'm more worried about anti-Semitic incidents happening because of this. I think these protests are kind of masking the overall problem on U.S. campuses, where again in 2023, the highest number of incidents reported since the organization began, the ADL, recorded 8,873 anti-Semitic incidents in 2023. And again, only 46% of Jewish college students felt physically safe on campus after the October 7th terrorist attack in Israel. And you guys know, I support Israel in all of this. And obviously, these protesters are anti-Israel, which is fine. You can, again, First Amendment, but I think this is, I know most of those protesters aren't anti-Semitic, but it is causing these people that are anti-Semitic to have a breeding ground and a base to kind of project their things. And for also to kind of end it too, I'm not even sure why we're protesting like against Israel in the sense of too, because um I understand Hamas is the problem, right? Hamas is the ones that built military outposts under schools, mosques, hospitals, and using civilians as human shield, Palestinian people. So technically Israel is trying to help the Palestinians from this regime that the Palestinian people voted in 2007, right? So I just don't understand why Israel is such a bad entity. Like, yeah, civilians are dying. It's war, unfortunately. But of course, all these Hamas military targets are underneath houses. So it's a tough situation for Israel, but I just don't understand the outcry on Israel at all. Like 100%. I cannot relate to that type of thing at all because Israel is fighting for the Palestinians. And people might be like, "Oh, you're lying." That's how I see it. Um, so I just don't understand it all. I really don't. They act like Israel is the one that did October 7th too. It just feels weird to me. It's probably my most controversial take.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject, and it's hard to To add some butter to it. I like that one. Add some butter
Yeah,
to it.
yeah, I think we should keep that.
I do too. It's you have to walk the line,
You do, and
and the reason what I'm going to say here is don't. Okay, this might be a little bit of controversy, but you're
say it.
talking about the stats from what was it, JDL,
ADL.
ADL. I said JDL. The Jew. Wow, what am I doing? But the they don't have those stats for the Palestinian kids that are
Mm-hmm.
at campus, and there's definitely
True.
not the same amount
Mm-hmm.
as there are Jewish kids, but I'm sure it's just as bad, really. And it's not like it's Jewish people attacking
Mm-hmm.
Palestinian people attacking Jewish people,
Yeah.
as much as it is like people who are neither
Mm-hmm.
deciding one way or another who they support, and then they're attacking these people. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
weird. That's how it's
Yeah.
working in the United States. Is like it's not like you're not hearing about Palestinians attacking Jewish
Mm-hmm.
people. It's like it's somebody else altogether who's it's like I
Yeah.
understand that you're taking up a cause or purpose for something, but that's not your cause to attack somebody over
Yeah.
in the country that has nothing to do with
Yeah.
that fight that's happening over there in Israel and in
Mm-hmm.
Palestine and now carrying over with Iran too.
Yeah.
And so really, it's scary times out there.
Yeah, like just to add some more butter again, to not really extend it, but it's such an American thing to do. Like something happens in the world, we have to have an opinion about it. We have to support the cause. You know, when Ukraine and Russia got attacked, oh, make sure you change your profile to Ukrainian flag. That's gonna help. No, it's not. Do you think the protests in your local college campus is gonna help the Israel war? No, the United States just sent billions of dollars to to bomb Gaza, to bomb Iran, to do all this to support Israel. It's not really accomplishing anything. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, hey, I was. It's just kind of like social media, like thoughts and prayers. What are you doing? Are you donating to help the Palestinian people? If so, okay, cool. That's good. You're actually contributing. Or are you just sitting in a campus square in a tent with a Gaza flag or whatever flag it is? I think it's Hamas flag even. We can get into that. And that's not really doing anything.
And not everybody's Hassan Piker. You don't want to, not everybody likes him either, but
Hmm.
that's somebody who he might talk his crap, but he's out there donating. He's out there
Yeah.
at these protests. He's buying
Hmm.
pizzas for these people.
Hmm.
He's supporting it. And so if you want to help out in a way that actually helps these people,
Yeah.
go and donate money, go and buy them food,
Actually
you
do
know,
something. Yeah.
do something like that. Don't attack random people at campuses. Like
Yeah.
there's no need for that. Not
I,
here. Especially
yeah. I
not
don't know
nowhere.
if
No nowhere, but not here.
Yeah, like I don't know if you guys know this, but people who were Jewish didn't pick to be Jewish, and people who were, Palestinians didn't pick to be Palestinians. We kind of just spawned in here and how we are. So don't attack people like that. It's weird.
Did you just assume that I didn't know or get to choose how I spawned in here?
If you did, tell me your secret, please. I did not get an option.
Our next topic. Ukraine uses long range missiles secretly provided by the US to hit Russian held areas, officials say. Fool?
All right. Well, listen, I bet the United States. I mean, obviously, when these missiles are used in Ukraine, the cat's out of the bag. But obviously, um, this wasn't part of like when we send the package, we usually send like a list of things we're sending them. Obviously, this wasn't on the list because, again, long range missiles is 190 miles. That's a long way, right? That's a lot of miles. So, um, and Russia has said repeatedly that any long range missiles in Ukraine will be deemed as a big step up of the war, which it is. I mean, you can hit higher targets. So, excuse me. Like there was a recent attack on the military airfield in Crimea, and also some more Russian troops in occupied areas, right? So, obviously, Russia's very anti-West. This is going to bolster them into being more anti-West. You can be like, see, United States is, being secretive and sending them long-range missiles. I think this is good for the Ukrainians. Obviously, I mean, you can hit higher targets. You can attack airfields that are, bombing Ukrainian cities. You can attack reserve troops that are in the back of the lines instead of just in the front lines, right? So you attack them while they're resting, which is really good for anti-morale. Basically, they're trying to sleep and rest, and because obviously troops, you know just in any war, they kind of 1 month on the front, 1 month rest, and go back and forth. If you can bomb the people resting, that's gonna really mess with their psyche there. So that's how you win wars, obviously, mental game. But yeah, this is definitely, Russia's not gonna like this at all. They haven't made a, which is weird though, they haven't really made a public statement about this yet. So that actually makes me worried, because usually when Russia's like, "Oh, don't do that," usually they're kind of just puffing their chest, looking big. But usually when they don't say anything, they're cooking. And when Russia cooks, it's not very good. So, but still, a W in my book here.
I also think it's a W, so that's something we agree on. Hey, not
Whoa.
many things, but something we agree on. It's a necessary step towards supporting a sovereign nation in its fight against an aggressive neighbor. By enabling Ukraine to strike Russian held areas, these missiles serve as a deterrent against further encroachment by Russian forces and contribute to the broader goal of restoring Ukraine's territorial integrity. The decision to supply these missiles demonstrates a commitment to international norms and rule of law, reinforcing the principle that territorial aggression will not go unchallenged. Sends a clear message to other nations that might consider similar acts, and it highlights the importance of respecting international borders and the sovereignty of other nations. By providing the Ukraine with the means to defend itself, the U.S. is demonstrating its support for a rules based international order and potentially preventing a catastrophic war. And to add on to that, this wasn't part of my response, but you're right. With Russia not responding, it's a little bit weird, but
Mhm.
they also have a lot going on right now. They've got that
Yeah.
terrorist attack they just had a little while ago. It's been a while now, but still dealing
Mhm.
with the ramifications of all that and um, priorities. I think
Yeah.
priorities. We'll see what happens, but that'll
Also,
probably be a topic we'll talk about soon. With what's the
right.
response, right?
Yeah, and also just add some butter to that. Georgia, not the state in the United States, guys, the country, which is under Russia, like semi control or maybe full control, I'm not sure, is currently going through a whole "we want freedom" thing, and they're doing mass protests and mass walkouts. So, Russia kind of has to like. It's basically splitting their eyesight to both fronts. So that's also causing a lot of woes inside of probably Putin's wonderful military circle.
And to add some butter to that, I'm going to quote one of my favorite parody artists, Rucka Rucka Ali.
No, beautiful.
If Mr. Putin wants to invade Georgia, I'll be waiting here with guns. I live in Atlanta.
Yeah. It also, just again, I know we're going to the next topic, but when I think there was like some bombings in Georgia, like the country, like like early 2000s, and a lot of people in the United States was like, Russia bombed Georgia, the state, and everyone's like freaking out. And like, I think the US had to put out like a statement saying like, not the state, guys, the country.
Yeah, I
It's
mean it's
funny.
understandable, obviously, with them
It
having the
makes
same
sense, yeah.
name, but like it's still funny.
It's just like
That'd
it's
be
like the
terrible if
typical
we
American
if
doesn't know anything
yeah,
outside.
if Georgia actually got bombed, we have some serious issues in the
Yeah, why would they
United
bomb
States,
Georgia
guys.
first? That's
That's
the question. Yeah.
oof.
There goes all the oranges. Right, there's oranges in Georgia, right?
I got my peaches.
Peaches, peaches. There
Peaches.
it is. There it is.
Yeah, peaches out in Georgia.
Mhm.
Florida has the oranges, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got them confused, chat. My bad.
Oh, you're not allowed to get them confused.
Yeah, I'm good with politics, but not fruit. My bad.
New evidence challenges the Pentagon's account of a horrific attack as the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan. So, I think it's vital to acknowledge the loss of life and the trauma experienced by both U.S. service members and Afghan civilians. The incident underscores the human cost of military interventions and the need for transparency and accountability in the actions of our military and government. The new evidence challenges the Pentagon's narrative, suggesting that there may have been more to the incident than initially reported. That raises questions about the effectiveness of the investigations and the willingness of the Pentagon to fully disclose information to the public. We must demand a thorough and impartial investigation into the events surrounding the attack. It's crucial that the Pentagon and other relevant agencies are held accountable for their actions and that steps are taken to prevent similar tragedies in the future.
Yeah. I mean, so this is why people don't trust the government. Okay. Like, the government's always like, oh, trust us. We can do these investigations. We can do this. We can do that. And then this is what happens, right? This independent organization or this independent report was like, this is actually not what happened. There was two Pentagon investigations that said that there was two bombers or three bombers from ISIS-K, right? And that's like a subset. I guess ISIS has like branches now. I don't know what they're doing, but they have ISIS-K. That was like their official branch that did it. It was actually only one bomber. And then in the official report, they said there was only minor gunfire. There was like thousands of like rounds of gunfire being exchanged from both sides. So I'm not sure why. Obviously, the U.S. troop withdrawal from Afghanistan was abysmal, was terrible. What happened there was horrendous, and especially this attack too. Like again, Afghan civilians took the brunt of this, with more of them dying than U.S. troops, but U.S. troops did die too. People that were in the back of their heads knowing they were going to see their families within 16 to 25 hours, right? Poof, right? And then again, why did the Pentagon hide this from us? Was our current administration afraid of hiding it, affecting the reelection bid, or was the Pentagon afraid that this would? I just don't know why they did this. It causes a lot of mistrust. No wonder people have conspiracy theories that the election was stolen, or this and that, or whatever. All these conspiracy theories about all the government. This is why these exist, because you can't just give an honest report about, yeah, it was a terrible withdrawal and you should be ashamed of it, but why lie about the actual attack? It's the fact that we have to find out this way just proves that we shouldn't. Why should I trust the government when they do stuff like this? Like when they say one thing, is it the other thing? Or like it. I don't know why they do this type of thing. It's such a minor thing compared to everything else, right? Obviously, a lot of people died, but such a minor thing to lie about. For relatively, I don't see a reason to lie about this. I just don't get it.
I think the military probably from the top down just needs to be, I don't know if it's reorganized or what, probably
Yeah.
reorganized because
Yeah.
they are just mismanaged from the
It
top to the
it
bottom, and that
it's
adds to the
it's
mismanagement. I mean, we were
yeah.
talking about last week that they were purchasing these parts for a
Oh my
plane
god, yes.
that it's normally like $20 for this part or these bucket of bolts, and the Pentagon pays like $1,000 or something like that for the
Mhm.
military to build these planes.
It's
And I'm just like,
and
and
like
that's like adds on to, it's like, how do you have people in charge that don't notice this stuff? And
yeah,
it's not that they're not noticing it, right? It's that
corruption.
somebody somebody's friend owns that company that sells
Yeah.
those bolts, and they know the guy at the military who's doing the budget, and
Yeah.
shh,
And our
that's how
military
much they
budget's
cost.
crazy.
That's how much these
Inflation, yeah.
things cost, guys.
Yeah. And you know
But
what? Like,
it's ridiculous.
yeah, and to add some more butter to this, like, the United States Army in the United States military should be the top dog, right, on the world stage, but have we won a war since Korea? Like, I don't understand. Like, we've been taking L's, and like we go to Afghanistan, we go to Iraq, obviously for Afghanistan because of the Taliban and Al Qaeda, but Iraq could be very questionable, right? Obviously. And then we just leave Afghanistan, and within 2 days, Taliban controls the country again. Like, I know our military, like, objective there wasn't to take over the country, but I just don't understand, like, a lot of people like to say the Russian military is corrupt, and it is, but ours is kind of too, right? I mean, we haven't won a war since Korea. I I I just don't get it. It's just it's sad.
We don't lose wars; they just never end. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, it's just yeah, it really I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. And it
That's
you know, I believe in like I believe in American excellence. Obviously, we're not better than anyone else in in the world, but I believe that America we're pretty strong people. Our military's strong. We have great resolve. We have great morals, and even though there's some bad people in America, we I feel like overall we're pretty good people. But what happened? What happened? Like you think of like the military might in World War II, and then look at what happened in Vietnam and Afghanistan, Iraq, and it's just like, are we just like, do we suck? Like, do we like, are we washed up? Like, what's going on? Or is it just corruption? I don't know.
people don't want to fight for their country anymore. They just want
Yeah,
to fight for the paycheck, and
yeah,
that's that. I think this might be a good topic for like a podcast because we're starting to go long
yeah,
on this one. But
yeah, sir.
that's what it is. Really, is like
Hmm.
they go to the military. You might have 1 out of 10 who goes because they want to serve their country.
Hmm.
Um, the rest are just going to collect a paycheck, and that's fine to me, right? That's
Yeah,
perfectly fine. But that also changes what happens in the grand scheme of protecting the country and all this stuff happening. Is somebody who wants to protect their country or who's going in for these reasons might be a little bit more honest than somebody who's just going in to collect a paycheck.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
not necessarily the case all the time, but
yeah. You can probably safely say 90% of the people who stormed in during D-Day at those beaches were probably there for American values and not a paycheck.
and
Now you
because
could
they
probably
got drafted, maybe.
yeah,
But
yeah. But hey, they at least
but
knew that there was a lot on the line.
mhm.
I think Americans, if there was another situation like that, I think we would muster up. Like after 9/11, we pretty much went on a mission of like, see this place, let's get rid of it, that type of thing. So I think it's there. It's just unfortunately it has to be awakened by tragedy.
And then for our last topic, last but not least, West Virginia says it will appeal ruling that transgender teen athlete to compete that allows. Let me
Hmm.
try that again, chat. West Virginia says it will appeal ruling that allowed transgender teen to compete. There we
There,
go.
there we
Full.
are. All right. So yeah, I mean, so originally, they there's a LGBTQ interest group. I forget, I don't know the name of it, but they said that it was it violates the rights of a 13-year-old athlete under Title I think 7, the Federal Civil Rights Law. And then it got appealed, and now they want to kind of get rid of it again. Um, I don't really understand. So I don't think it's an issue really, because I looked up the stats. I'm like, is it really a big issue? Like, are men just identifying as women and just destroying people in women's sports? Is that a thing? Like, is that you know happening? And if you ask the right media, that's happening everywhere. Men are going to women's sports and just dominating this level. This 100th place. Man could get number one place in female sports, and I think that type of talk has underlying sexism, honestly, because I looked up the stats. Right, so in 2003, the Olympic Committee allowed trans athletes to compete, and out of the 70 since 2003, okay, 71,000 Olympians have done things in the Olympics since 2003. Only two of them, okay, two chat, have been trans women. One came in dead last, and the other came 37th out of 42. Okay, so they're not destroying the competition. You don't have, again, you hear maybe that one or two stories of that individual who identifies as a woman who's trans, who that was what kind of was alluding to. He was, when he was competing with men, he was, I think, one of the last people, and then when he transitioned, he did women's sports, and he was like number one, like totally right out of the water. That's one instance. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be this. It's not happening everywhere. I think it's really just sexist. I mean, this whole trans debate. I mean, we're kind of just talking about the sports ban. Do I think it's a problem? Not really. Um, I think it's totally fine. Obviously, you have a bunch of people who don't like it, but it's not really affecting women winning. Again, out of 71,000 Olympians, only two are trans women, and they both kind of sucked still. So,
Personally, I think it's deeply troubling. The case highlights the ongoing struggle for transgender rights in the United States and the importance of inclusivity in our society. Transgender individuals are a marginalized group in our society facing significant discrimination and challenges. This includes access to healthcare, employment, and even participation in sports. By denying a transgender teen athlete the opportunity to compete with her peers, they're sending a clear message that they are not welcome and that their identity is not valid. That can have devastating effects on their mental health and well being, further perpetuating the cycle of marginalization and exclusion. And to this one kind of alludes back to what Fool was talking about with the Olympians and
mhm.
them allowing transgender athletes to compete. But the appeal is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the science behind transgender identity and the impact of puberty blockers on athletic performance. There is no evidence to suggest that transgender girls have an inherent advantage over their cisgender peers. In fact, the use of puberty blockers can actually put transgender girls at a disadvantage as they may not experience the same physical changes as their peers during puberty. This means that transgender girls who are taking puberty blockers are not gaining any unfair advantage in sports. It's a clear violation of Title IX. You were saying 7.
9.
That's why I was putting up the fingers there. But
Oh,
Title IX,
thank
it
you.
prohibits
Sorry.
sex-based discrimination in education programs that receives federal funding. And by denying a transgender person the right to compete in sports with their peers, West Virginia is engaging in sex-based discrimination and violating their rights under this important law.
Mhm.
I think it's important that this gets figured out fast and that the appeal does not go through. Like you said, there's not really a widespread problem with this. You hear once in a blue moon of a transgender athlete blowing the others out of the water,
Yeah,
and
it's a rarity.
and it's in that case, it's the worst possible example because they were, like you said, like last in their sport as a
Mhm.
male, and then they
Yeah.
transitioned and they're first, and that's not been happening most of the time. What happens
Yeah.
is they transition over and they're usually just as good or
Mhm.
worse than they were
Yeah.
before, and there's not a difference. And
Mhm.
honestly, if somebody has an elite athletic body, they're going to have an elite athletic body, and they're going to be good at what they're doing. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not going to matter if they're a male or female. I wish I would have taken this down, but I was also reading that I think it was baseball, might have been no, actually it was wrestling. There was a state championship in wrestling. This they allowed in one of these states this girls to compete basically in the
Mhm.
same classes as men, and woman won the high school state championship wrestling, like the state tournament. That's insane to think
Yeah.
about because you're thinking about wrestling.
They go
Wrestling's
that's
about as
banned.
physical as a sport as you can get. Like
Yeah.
you can talk about football all you want. That's tackling, that's whatever. Wrestling, you're you're grabbing people using your strength to make sure they can't get out of these positions. That's about as strong as you can get. And if you think if a woman can compete with a man in that, they can compete with men in most anything. I
Mhm.
don't deny
Yeah.
that women's bodies and men's bodies are built differently and that,
There's differences. Yeah.
there's differences, but to say that and again, if women want to play football, let women play football. I don't
Yeah.
care. Like pat them up, get them in there. If they want
Yeah.
to play. You seen Caitlin Clark now in the WNBA with well, if she actually plays in the WNBA because she got offered to the Big Three by that's another thing here added to the butter. We're gonna slide that butter on here
Eh,
for the final one, but Caitlin Clark, she is the biggest woman in sports right now that everybody's talking about. She went to Iowa. She ended up losing in the national title game, but she was offered by Ice Cube, who owns the Big Three, to basically the contract that they offered was more than she would make in one season or in her lifetime in the WNBA in one season in the Big
Well,
Three.
good for her.
And but this is the stipulations of the Big Three. The Big Three, you're playing with men, so it's
Yeah.
men and women, and could change women's sports forever because WNBA people see it as this sport that they don't take seriously.
Hmm.
If you have this woman who goes over to play with men and she succeeds,
Yeah.
then that could change everything.
I'm all
And
for it
so
as
it's
long
going to
as
be interesting to
everyone's.
see what happens with Caitlin Clark moving forward and the
Mhm.
decision she makes there, because even though she's just a woman, she's a woman, she's not a transgender woman. It could have an effect on transgender sports if she
Mhm.
is able to play at the same level as these men or better.
Yeah. Again, as long as the standards are the same for men and women, let them play together. If a woman's better than a man, okay. If a man's better than a woman, it's okay. It's fine. You know, I'm not insecure enough that if a woman beats me at a sport, I'm mad about it. It just means they train harder than me. That means they're more physically fit. And also, when it comes to like transgender women in sports, the data doesn't lie. It's not a problem for um for anyone really. There's outliers to any data set, guys. So of course you're gonna hear, the right talk about, oh, this one athlete, you know, crappy in the men's league, amazing in the women's league. They're gonna harp on that data, that random point of data that occurred, because that will happen with any data set. Right? If you do anything with data, you'll know that there's this random point somewhere that's like you don't align with my findings, and that's okay because it happens. Outliers are a thing, but the data does prove that's really not a big deal. Women are getting beat to the ground by transgender women. They just want to be happy with what body they have, right? And me personally, thankfully I was happy with the body I have, but obviously they're in the world, they're not happy with their body. They transitioned and they want to play sports, and most sports are gender based, so they have to play women's sports now. So sometimes they're forced into the women's sports and then they get caught up in all this crap. So maybe we should just have leagues with men and women. We won't have this problem. So there's that.
And then I do want to point out that we do have a chatter right now who has some questions and is responding about our
Mhm.
topic, XP Tanko. We normally, this is only our third episode, we normally don't do questions in the middle of the show or anything. Although this is the last topic, so it's a good time
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
talk about things. We have discussed doing an end of show Q&A or discussion. I do think we have a couple minutes here. Fool, are you reading chat?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, I was looking at it.
Do you
Um,
have anything you want to respond to him?
yeah, I mean, with you talking about the UFC rank amateur male, right? Um, Outliers. It's a data set that has outliers, right? So if we harp on the outliers, then of course it's a problem. But I want you to look at all the other transgender women in high school, middle school, and even of the Olympics, and you'll find that again. I don't know if you were here for this, but from 2003, that's when we started letting trans people just go into the Olympics. That's 71,000 Olympians. Okay, two have been trans women, and one of them came dead last, and the others came 37th out of 42. So they both sucked, right? They weren't dominating the competition. So just look at the rest of the data. I know it's easy to look at one side of the data. I know I've done it too. Look at both sides.
And
Just
to
look at
slide
both
in
sides.
on that response there too, XP, if you're still there, I didn't know this about the UFC fighter, and I'd be interested to kind of read up on that, just to research it and add to our arsenal. We're always
Hmm.
learning. We're always trying to get better. We're always trying to discuss the topics that matter. to the American people. So I appreciate you bringing this up to us. And I actually do think, though, with that, we've reached an hour, and this is probably the end of our discussion. I do want to thank everyone for catching the third episode of the Great American Squabble with my perfect and amazing co-host, Unoptimized Fool. We appreciate you refueling with the gas. We'll be back next week. Take care, everybody.
See you guys.